I'm Charles Bowman and welcome to this, our latest episode of Off the Agenda. And today we are in the City of London, a commercial powerhouse and international hub for financial and professional services, home of the Bank of England and many other financial institutions. And I'm delighted to be joined by Jacky Wright, a British technology executive and chief digital officer and a corporate vice president at Microsoft US. She has had an extraordinary career that has spanned the public and private sectors. Jacky Wright is widely regarded across the world as one of the most influential women in the tech industry. She was listed at number 6 in the Power List 2018 rankings of the most influential black people in the UK, and again at number 4 in 2019 and 2020. And this year, she ranks number 1, following on from the previous year's holder, Sir Lewis Hamilton, for her continued rise in shaping digital transformation and innovation in the tech sector. And as we continue to highlight those whose own careers pave the way for the next generation of leaders, it is my great pleasure to welcome Jacky Wright to Off the Agenda. Jacky, welcome. And first of all, may I just say thank you. Thank you so much for sparing the time to be with us on Off the Agenda today. And I'm going to start, if I might, going back to, you were born in London, you grew up in Tottenham, an area which had had many local issues and moments in history, Broadwater Farm riots of 1985, and of course the starting point for the 2011 riots. And what I wanted to ask was really what it was like growing up at that time there in the community, the challenges you had to face, and perhaps the opportunities it might have presented too.
Yeah, and so you know that era was post or during post Enoch Powell era of a major influx of Caribbean people from various parts of the Caribbean. So I think starting out a strong sense of community, especially centered around the Caribbean community. We had community centers. So, I went to a center called the Paul Bogle Center, which was a community center centered on really helping us recognize and know and acknowledge what it was like to live in the Caribbean, learn about Caribbean lifestyle, because I was born in the UK, so, I'd never been to the Caribbean, but gave you a sense of where you came from, and it was really focused on that. We had areas of West Green Road, which was really a Caribbean community where people bought their food. There was Dyke and Dryden, the most well-known travel agency for going to the Caribbean. So there was a real sense of a Caribbean community. Now, I would add that I think there was a lack of community relationship between the police and the community. So I think that, and it manifested itself in many different ways. I also think there was this, this notion of race and race relations and how that manifested itself. There were pockets of, integration, but there were also pockets of separation. And I think, as I think about it, what separated myself from maybe someone else, maybe family structure, a strong sense of values, knowing that education was non-negotiable. You were going to university, there were no ifs, ands, and buts. It wasn't like something you had to think about. You knew you were going. My dad and my mother really focused on creating that sense of family, family structure. You'd have dinner, Sundays, and the traditions that they brought with them were instilled in us. And so I think when I think about how I was raised, and I look back on that set the foundation for everything else.
You referenced family, Jacky, and your father had a strong career and worked in the Royal Air Force, the RAF, but later decided that the family might migrate to the USA, essentially seek better opportunities. And as I understand it, he believed there perhaps weren't enough role models in the UK for young people at that time. How did that shape your vision and aspiration as a young person at that moment?
I think, as my father envisioned or even saw in his mind was that what the US was going through was what the UK was going to go through. And I think, he was partially right in that regard. And hence this rallying cry in the US where leaders started to emerge. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, there were role models that started to emerge. He thought that those types of role models, the role modeling, if you can see it, you can be it, that was an integral part of how we would be viewing ourselves, our ability to gain confidence in who we are. And I think for me, it has shaped me wholeheartedly. I'll use an example. I worked at one point for GE and my CEO was a black man, a man of color. How many exist? Very few. And he even helped me as a sponsor and a mentor and gave me my first CIO role. This notion of being able to see it and recognize your role in that, it was for me transformative.
So great foresight on behalf of your father. And of course, when you arrived in the US, you went to the City University in New York. And I was keen to actually understand how different that educational experience in the US was compared with your earlier experiences in the UK. And actually, perhaps what were your motivations for studying computer science?
So I didn't start out as a computer science major. I started out as a political science major because I was somewhat like my dad, wanting to solve these problems, which were inherently about making the world a better place and the injustices that occurred. And I fell into technology. And, different from the UK, you're able to change your major. It might take you a bit longer, but you change your major based on your learning and what's evolving in your environment. And I think that was integral for me to be able to then embrace technology, which is what I've done and embraced it throughout my career.
And Jacky, you've held many senior positions in global organizations, most notably in Microsoft, where you were appointed corporate vice president and now hold the position as chief digital officer. Keen to understand how you've adapted to becoming a leader in an industry where few women have occupied senior and boardroom positions.
As I think about leadership, I think leadership is in each and every one of us. It's how it manifests itself based on what you're confronted with, the opportunities you see, the injustices, and how I, as the only person in the room, as I go into this room, what am I compelled to do to make sure that others don't feel the same way and not treated the same way? And I think that leadership trait has been embedded throughout my life as somewhat the ethos of who I am. And as I think about how I've done it now at scale, it's really brought upon me this compelling desire to want to make sure that I do that for each and every person that in society.
Tremendous. And you've advocated for ethics in technology and diversity in the workplace all throughout your career, leading to many organizational initiatives throughout. I was again keen to ask, what are the key transformational projects that you are most proud of and have made perhaps the most significant impact in the technology sector?
I'll start with a most recent one, which is a program called Accelerate, which is about going into underrepresented communities to reskill, upskill, and really focus on economic development. And so we go into a community in partnership with government, in partnership with the private sector, in partnership with academia, create a curricula around the skills that are needed in that community. And then in partnership with learning partners, focus on the training, and then with the corporations, create a pathway to employment. Non-traditional, whether it be apprenticeships, internships, summer programs, but really creating a system around raising the economic improvement, social mobility of a society, of a community. And that really, for me, with technology at the core. And what better way to remove the barriers through technology with an ecosystem in partnership with everyone. And the outcome is a better outcome for everyone.
Indeed, and actually one of the issues that the globe faces at this moment in time is exactly that: inequality, digital skills gaps, and so on and so forth. And it's fabulous to hear what you have been doing through Microsoft. And many private and public organizations are doing tremendous work. Keen to understand what technology industry can perhaps do to help address that imbalance.
And it's not just tech companies. Every company has a responsibility to embed in their purpose and mission to help communities around the world to all thrive. Our mission is to empower everyone and every person on this planet to achieve more. And that means creating a system, working in partnership in a country with government, with the private sector, with academia, to focus on the existential challenges in that country, to then make sure that we improve the country from all aspects: geopolitical, economical, societal, the full aspect. And every company has a responsibility to do that. And the technology companies, even more so, because they can bring to bear the products and the services and the solutions to help do that.
Fantastic. So purpose, collaboration, and technology at the core. I get that message very, very clearly. Digital inclusion in emerging technologies is really critical to ensuring a fairer, human-centered fifth industrial revolution. What's Microsoft's positioning with regard to some of these complex issues of privacy, security, and accessibility?
And it's a Microsoft, but it's Jacky, the values align here. Privacy is a fundamental right, a right for all. When you think about security, we have a zero trust. That's how we go in, to make sure and ensure that trust is at the heart of everything we do. Accessibility, we build accessibility into every product, every service, and every process. And every company, every organization needs to think about that, how they engage with their customers, with their partners, and make sure we remove the barriers so that everyone can participate in this digital transformation, this digital inclusion that we want. And then there's the ethics. When you think about technology as responsible AI and ethics at the core, we have to do all of that in an ethical way.
Maybe moving forward a little bit towards the sort of the future, and we all stand essentially on the front line of responsible innovation, if I can put it that way. But from your perspective, I'm keen to understand where the technology industry is moving towards, and what will Microsoft and the tech industry look like in 30 years' time?
Yeah, I wish I had enough foresight to do that, but. I would say, if I think about the macro level, I think this emergence of the physical and virtual world coming together enables us to solve problems in ways we would have never thought before. If you think about such things as healthcare and the ability to virtually understand thousands of miles away, to then be able to solve the problem at scale. This notion is the phenomena that we really are starting to see. And I think technology will become more and more embedded in a virtual and physical way that will help us transform how we do things, how we solve the problems of the world. And it's exciting times for us. But there are also cons, and we also have to recognize the ethical elements and making sure privacy is at the heart. Data, information, misinformation. We understand the ramifications of those things as part of it.
And of course, it's moving very, very quickly at this moment in time.
Absolutely. The pace of change, the amount of data we have, the proliferation, is more than we've ever seen in our lifetimes.
Tremendous. Jacky, looking at you yourself, you've recently been listed as the #1 in the power list of the most influential black people in the UK. Previous winners being the likes of Sir Lewis Hamilton, Sir Kenneth Elisa, and Baroness Scotland. And you were also chosen by the BBC Radio 4's Today programme as one of their 7 chosen guest editors over the Christmas period. How cool is that? Fantastic. But I was keen to understand how you will use your growing influence to shape opportunities and ensure there is a clear pathway forward for the next generation of leaders to follow in your own footsteps.
So I think there are two things. I think every opportunity I get, you use that opportunity to help folks understand what it's like to be different. The radio, for example, I went to a school in Tottenham and spoke to the students and helped people understand these students are no different than any other student in any part of the country. I see my responsibility. I'm really truly humbled and honored by the award. But I do that quietly. And so how do I now use my platform at scale to do the things that I've always been doing, to open a door or a window, to bring people through, to build awareness of what it's like to be different and help people understand what it's like for other people's lived experiences, to be an advocate and a sponsor, to really challenge structural things that need to be changed to improve our society. And then to just role model so that people, this notion of if you can be it, you can see it, to continue to role model so that people can be inspired to want to do and want to be and have the confidence to do that.
That's a brilliant answer, and I shall remember that expression, to open doors and windows to bring people through. Gosh, I won't forget that at all. Leading me to my final question, if I may, and that's a question that I ask all of our guests, and it's particularly relevant today in these really challenging and indeed frightening times as we wake up to terrifying news in Ukraine and more. But what are the lines of support? What's the encouragement and advice that you would give to the younger generation to give them a sense of hope and aspiration as they start out in the world and on their own career journey?
So as I look at, the younger generation, Gen Zers, the millennials, you name it, I see a phenomena that I don't think I have seen before, at least in my lifetime, where globally, the purpose, mission, and values of that generation are the same. And they have an innate ability to raise their voices where they see things that are occurring that they should change or want to be able to change. Example, climate change, social injustice, political unrest. At scale, they've used the social media, they've used the power of technology to raise awareness, to build camaraderie across the globe to be able to do that. So what needs to happen? We need to empower them. We need to listen to their voices. We need to create the opportunities and the pathways for them to make change and us being the conduit for that change. And I think if we recognize that, I am truly confident that this world will be a better place. So I'm encouraging them to continue to use your voice, continue to use all media and platforms to be able to challenge where we are today, and we will continue to empower you so that we can make a better world.
What a fabulous way to end, Jacky. That sense of common purpose, mission and values, as you put it so clearly, so articulately, and give them the sense of empowerment so that their voice can continue to be heard. Jacky, thank you so much for sharing your story with us on Off the Agenda today. We thank you enormously for that, and we wish you all the very, very best with your career path ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it's been an absolute honour and privilege to speak to Jacky Wright today, to hear her inspirational story in terms of her own career path and journey. Thank you, Jacky, and thank you all for listening. That's all from me, other than to say, as always, stay tuned for more conversations, great discussions, and inspirational guests. Thank you again, and bye for now.